Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the IESF European Regional Qualifier 2024. Going to be an exciting day with three best of threes, and accompanying you today for all three matches is going to be me, Arashi, and I'm joined by Burger Kim herself.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to be here with you, Arashi. I mean, this is the first time we're going to be getting a glimpse of all the teams that will be playing here. And I think it's very
Mhm.
exciting for all of the MLBB fans worldwide, too, because we're getting a whole lot more players. And I can't wait. I mean, qualifiers like this, we're going to get to see what type of strategy they're going to bring out today.
We're used to Southeast Asia, Asian,
Oh, yeah.
but not Europe is in the conversation, man. This is where things get really exciting because there's some countries we've seen actually being very active in esports, some not so much. So the fact that there's going to be a clash within Europe itself with the different teams, different cultures, I think it's going to be a very exciting situation. And of course, as an analyst myself, we can look forward to great new maybe strats, maybe metas
Mhm.
coming out of this whole event.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Europe for a couple of months, like just a few months ago, right? And I played on their server. It's pretty interesting because like there's a certain meta that it's not really that
Ooh.
popular in Southeast Asia, but then when you go to Europe, it seems like every single rank game there is that hero. I mean, I'm expecting to see that here today, knowing that for the first matchup we're going to be having, of course, best of the three, of like what you mentioned, Ukraine versus Moldova first. So I
Hmm.
can't wait to see what they pull off. And knowing some of these regions, they're actually quite experienced as well. They've had some tournaments here and there. So I don't know. There's also a new patch, Rashi. So I don't know. There's just so many things to take in
Yeah.
here. A new region, new patch, and yeah, we're slowly getting back into the assassin meta as well.
Exactly, man. The assassin meta is just so much more exciting, and I feel like even before the current patch, right, it arguably can make things a bit more interesting. We've seen that the meta is just a lot more flexible. So even if you want to go for those assassins, if you want to stick with the good old utility junglers, everything is still very much possible. It all depends on how you really want to plan it out. Whether or not you have a great, solid game plan that you can carry from the early game all the way to the late game. And as you mentioned, Kim, there's been a lot of some of these regions, some of these countries we've seen being active in esports, some not so much. But in the history of Mobile Legends, it's we're no stranger to the fact that some of these countries are kind of unheard of, but then they can come in swinging with something very exciting, something very effective, and completely reshape the meta. So that is definitely something that a lot of countries have to keep in the back of their minds, right? Just because they are more active in esports does not mean that they're guaranteed to win here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lurking in the MLBB Discord. If you guys are there, I mean, I'm there frequently. Like, I get like, people who are talking about like, okay, there's actually a server for this country, and they have a lot of active players. So I'm so surprised, and I'm actually so happy for MLBB that it's growing this fast, and I think hopefully, by the next few years we get to see some of these countries, right, starting with the European region. I think a lot of people are also looking forward to this because we've seen a lot of like Southeast Asia, North America, right, has been quite visible in the big tournaments here and there for MLBB. But for Europe, I can't wait, right? Like we're seeing different names here. Just to name a few, like we got Ukraine, Moldova today, like I mentioned, Turkey. You got Slovenia, you got Serbia and Spain as well that will be competing later in this BO3. And talking about a BO3, Arashi, there's just so many things that can happen, right? Like getting the momentum in the first game and then eventually just taking it in with a sweep. So that could actually happen.
A lot of teams definitely have to keep in mind, right? It's a shorter time frame. Best of fives are great and all, but with a best of three, we get in straight to business, man. All these teams understand the importance of that first game win and how much more difficult it is to try and get that victory in a reverse sweep fashion. Of course, some teams may be slow starters, but especially for moments like this, that's where the maybe pocket picks, the secret picks that they have at their disposal need to be shown a lot earlier. So that is definitely something we can look forward to. And with the new patch, man, like you mentioned, I am curious to see whether or not there will be some changes in playstyle, especially in that mid
Hmm.
lane, right? Being a
Oh
mage player
yeah.
myself, I think there's a lot more potential right there. And with the mid lane just being so much literally in the center of all the action, if the mid lane changes how they play, it kind of affects the rest of the map as well. So I'm looking forward to that lane in particular, personally.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'm also happy to see like just to I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting super excited as well when it comes to the draft, right? Like there's these new
Mhm.
mid lane heroes that have been popping up. Like not to name a few, like it's just Zas has been so OP in this current patch. Plus, like I think in the banning phase as well, like a lot of the people have adjusted, like banning away the assassins. I don't know, Araji. I'm curious. Like, what do you want to see in the mid lane today? Knowing that we're both so familiar already with the Southeast Asia meta. I mean, what do you want to see today in the mid lane that you haven't seen in professional play just yet?
Hmm. Personally, I've been kind of theorizing that with the way things are going, right, a lot of teams have really been opting for this very clear-cut, straightforward strategy. And today, the fact that all the games are best of three as well, kind of plays into that too. You want to start strong, start fast, and I feel like that means that counter-engage heroes can be very, very good. So something like a Valir is a personal bias of
Oh.
mine.
Mhm.
I'm thinking that it has potential, man. And what better time to bring it out than now? Start things off with an absolute bang.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that actually working out since it seems like, the mid lane has shifted, right? Like for the longest time, it has been, the Novaria, Vexana, the Valentina. I think, it's time for these newer heroes, or maybe some of these heroes that have been in the pocket for quite some time to actually shine this time. And what better way to actually shine of course, the European regional qualifiers. We're going to be having, of course, all of these BO3s today, and eventually we're going to be moving on to the group stage later on, wherein guys can get to see like different countries and different teams get to battle it out.
For sure. Well, looking at the groups right here, as we're talking about all these different countries, Group A, you can see that there's just for each group there's just five countries playing in there. So there's just so much more potential, man. Unfortunately, of course, there will be some teams, some countries that won't make it through to the second phase. But that's just the way it is, right? It's a tournament for a reason, and we're here to find the best of the best. And from all these teams right here, you see on screen Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D. There's just so much more potential, and there's going to be some rivalries for sure. And we have to just wait and see to see which country can really come up with the most effective strategies in today's games.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the groups here so far, I think it's like what you mentioned, C and D. You got Turkey there that I guess that has the most experience when it comes to like having a lot more of these tournaments in their countries, and I think that they can actually be, the teams that are, or the team that these groups will actually look into. And at the same time, I'm actually not surprised too if these other countries will actually pull something off or something different this time. But yeah, that's the group stage for you. And today we're still going to be having again a BO3 Arashi. I don't know what to say here. Don't know what to expect still because
For
this is the
sure.
time. I mean we really can't say that okay they're gonna go with like the usual assassin and maybe some of them are still comfortable with the previous patch. It does happen, so I don't know.
Mhm.
Expect the
Well,
unexpected
before we get
here.
to ourselves here, we have to take a look at the schedule for today. It's Ukraine against Moldova for the first match, and afterwards, Turkey and Slovenia. Right? You said, as you mentioned, Kim, there's going to be a bit of a difference in
Mm-hmm.
experience, but that's what we're here for sure. And afterwards, it's Serbia and Spain, seems like. So I think personally, of course, some of these countries with their own experiences will be great to see how they've developed independently from Southeast Asia. But with the countries that don't really have a lot of experience here, that's where I think that the exciting developments can happen. So fingers crossed. I'm waiting to see if an underdog story can start to develop all the way from day number one.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the teams that will be playing here in today's schedule, I think all eyes are on Turkey. I mean, not only do they have like a major tournament that's in their country, right? They've been in world championships throughout the years, even some of these MSC, the mid-season tournament. They've been there, so I think all eyes are on them. But for now, we're gonna put our eyes onto Ukraine and Moldova first, and looking at these two countries that will be going up against each other again, there's really not much vods. I think that's something that these two teams can actually leverage on because having a lot of vods or having a lot of reels all about you, right? Like you can get so much information about the play style of a certain team or a certain country.
I'm curious to see Moldova, right? It's a country we don't really
Yeah.
see too often when it comes to esports. Ukraine, on the other hand, we know that they have technically some experience when it comes to esports overall. But for Mobile Legends, I think we've seen them on occasion as well. So as we mentioned, there's going to be a bit of a contrast here. So I personally always have my eyes on the lesser known, right? Being an
Yeah.
analyst, it's all about looking at the knowns, as you mentioned, Kim, the VODs, the replays. For Moldova, not too much of that. So I'm definitely trying to keep an eye out for maybe some kind of some kind of hints on how they're gonna play, what kind of heroes maybe, what kind of play style, all the way from the drafting phase, right? That's where it all begins.
Yeah, I mean, just a little trivia for everybody here. For Ukraine and Moldova, they're actually right beside each other, like a little geography lesson there. And I think with countries that are so close to each other, like you and me, right? Like the Philippines and Indonesia, like we have
Yeah.
pretty much a very similar meta, right? So I'm not surprised if these two teams are gonna have something similar, or they're gonna pull off something similar since they're playing on either the same server, or maybe even Ukraine would play on Moldova server, or vice versa. So yeah, I don't know. I'm expecting to see something like that here.
Well, we can see a lot of similarities, or maybe one of these countries will throw a curveball, right? And just maybe adopt a style from somewhere else that's just very unexpected because they know somewhat of each other's playstyle. But looking at Ukraine's roster here, we have Wen's Freestyle, Sensei, Macaron, and Vlado C Cutie, if I say that correctly.
Ooh, there's also a cutie here in Ukraine. I think yeah, we got all of that right. Like very interesting names
Mm-hmm.
here. Some kind of like similar to the IGNs that we've had here in Southeast Asia, but Ukraine, like what you mentioned, right? They've had tons of experience, and this is the team that they will be having today. I'm not so sure if they have like a six-man or they have some other players there, but this is going to be the team that they will be fielding today, and hopefully move on to the next round. And speaking of that, Ukraine, we're going to be seeing also the lineup that Moldova will have here, and it's gonna be Bella Chow, Suspicious Owl, and I'm okay. This is something I was asking you, or actually the production team. How do you actually read this? If you guys know, if you guys are friends of Arthur, please let us know how to read his IGN. But for now, we're gonna call him Q. You got Yoshimitsu and Espresso. I do need that right now. You need that as well, Arashi. We're gonna be having a very long night here for our
Mhm.
BO3, and that's gonna be our lineup for Moldova.
In our time zone, we're going deep into like late night
Oh
territory
yeah.
here. But of course, over there, things are all peachy, exciting. And for Moldova, man, I mean, some of these names are just somewhat familiar, and I think it makes
Mhm.
for a very interesting dynamic, right? Espresso and Yoshimitsu. This is something that we can recognize technically. But for Ukraine, I mean, we saw earlier freestyle, right? And that's a very cool name because, especially in Indonesia, I don't know about the
Oh
Philippines where you're
yeah.
from, Kim, but in Indonesia, when someone is so good with their hands, and they can do crazy things, high mechanical plays, they refer to that as like a freestyle play. So
Oh
with a
yeah.
name like that, we have expectations, man. We have to see if he can fill those shoes.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of the freestyle, I think it's also a very big thing here. Even with our content creators for MLBB in the Philippines, like there's this content creator called Kerax. He actually coined the term
Yeah.
freestyle Bruno Mars because like he does all these like crazy plays with the Bruno and the
Hmm.
Gadot Kacha that he's actually well known for over on
Oh.
social media platforms. You guys can actually check him out. I'm not so sure if he's still streaming, but yes, he's actually well known here in the Philippines. So I don't know. Maybe this guy actually has his own signature hero. We're gonna have to find out actually in the phase. And since this is a BO3, not a BO1, we're gonna get to see if that is actually a comfort hero of his.
Right, if it is a comfort hero, definitely it will show up a lot earlier, I think. Maybe some of them are thinking they want to save some strats. It's very early on in the tournament
Oh
after all,
yeah.
but I feel like there's just too much at risk, right? Again, with so many countries all competing, if you take things too slow and you're giving up some games, I feel like that's going to be a bit too dangerous, especially for teams that are less experienced, right? Putting yourself on the back foot like that can be quite damaging to the focus, the mental state as well. So I think comfort heroes will definitely show up quite early on. And that's the question, especially with some of the changes here. Have some more heroes come into the meta a bit more, right? Being a bit more effective, or has some heroes really fell down? Because we talked about Zask just earlier, and how in the current brawly, just team fight heavy style, this Zask is just so beneficial because of the kit, right? The survivability, the damage
Yeah.
output, the passive even on death. But it actually has been technically nerfed by quite a bit, so teams have to be very acutely aware of those factors.
Yeah, I mean the Zas is pretty much like the Lilia. You click that black shoes, and for the Zas, you just click that ultimate, get that Dominator's Descent up. You're still up and kicking, and it's really what's so good in team fights, the survivability of the mid laner, which you actually pointed out earlier, which is a very significant factor when you think about it when it comes to the team fights, right? And
Mhm.
honestly, I can't wait to see like different types of play styles here. That's what I'm actually looking forward to, especially when I'm casting different regions, new regions. I don't know about you, Arashi. Like you've had a lot of experience, a lot of casting experience, especially in Southeast Asia in particular, and me as well, right? Like I've been here and there. Sometimes in Europe, I've been to like Mekong and even the MENA. So it's pretty interesting to see like all of these teams actually pull off their own flavor of the current meta.
Exactly, because I think right now it's just that flexible, right? And I think it all comes down to generally two things, right? Even when you talk about the EXP lane, if you talk about the mid lane, you brought up survivability, and that's a big factor. But I feel like it all comes down to the damage output and the utility, right? When we talk about the mid lane, EXP, and jungle, it seems like these two things are what is usually kind of balanced out, right? Do we want to be able to do a lot more damage, or do we want to be able to try and set up and make some plays happen? And that's usually where it gets interesting. And the reason why I think Zask just works in so well, and heroes like the Lilia with an extra bit of survivability, it's just a defensive tool. It's also an aggressive tool because with all that defensive prowess, you can just be a bit more bold in your approach and how you want to deal damage, especially in the midst of a chaotic team fight where on someone a bit more vulnerable, you're just susceptible to just immediately getting hit by a stun or a chunk of burst damage, and you're just out of the fight. But just like that, we're gonna go straight into the drafting phase right here, and you're seeing an Aldous and a Julian
Yeah.
here already from the side of Ukraine. What?
You know what? I think you really can't count anything out as of this point, right? Like I think, of course, these teams definitely did their research, or perhaps they think these are the heroes that actually work on their server or actually quite OP on their server. If you think about it, Aldous, right? Like a great scaling hero can get actually pretty tanky when you have the right items. But we were talking about the assassins coming back to the meta, and honestly, if I play rank games, or actually I just take out all of the assassins. They're such a pain to deal with, especially in the current meta. I mean, if you're gonna ask me what I'm gonna ban out, if I were the coach here, I'd take out like the Hayabusa, the Ling, the Fanny, especially if the jungler from the opposing team actually knows how to use it well.
Assassins, I guess that's the main power, right? It's not just being able to do damage, being able to just outplay. It's also the fact that you're forcing your opponents to react and maybe even try and force them to pick some kind of counter tools. But aside from the Aldous, the Julian, and the Moskov, definitely a bit more in line with what we're used to. Especially the Julian, it came out of nowhere and it has a lot of burst damage potential. And as you mentioned, Hayabusa,
Yes.
Ling, and the Chip as well, though. So when I talk about global presence, before the Loi and Chip has always been contested, but
Oh
now
yeah.
for the side of Moldova, it's the Chip first and the Loi left open. But Ukraine won't go on it though. They go for that Roger.
Yeah, I think this is a flex pick for the side of Ukraine. I would say this is very flexible. You can put it in the jungle. You can still put it in the gold lane. I know it has been nerfed, but it's still pretty annoying once it gets the right items, or once it gets like the right amount of farming. Like the Roger can really wipe out the entire team. But this means like the other team can actually counter out with something that can actually suppress the Roger. I'm thinking of
Whoa.
Arlot, something that can do the setup. But okay, something different here. The high loss, which was actually adjusted, buffed up. I think also the items as well can work well with this high loss. I think there was a time we also seen the high loss in the XP lane, but wow, okay, I was thinking of like Nathan, or maybe even a Melissa or an Iksha, but it's actually a Clint here. What do you think about this, Arashi?
Clint is definitely great in the laning phase, but against a Roger and now possibly against a Lunox as well, you really lack the outplay tools like a Roger or a Natan has at their disposal. You have a bit of kite back potential with your second skill, right? The pushback and a bit of a root as well. But against a team that's so aggressive, you're gonna find yourself just struggling to find safe zones to try and come in. But maybe for the side of Moldova, that's where the Hylas becomes important, right? You can start a glorious pathway and allow the Clint a bit more regeneration, a bit more movement speed, perhaps, to try and outmaneuver. But like we're saying, man, Ukraine with the aggressive style
Mhm.
here, Roger, CC, and Lunox, everyone can just dive in towards the back. And even with the Hylas, stacking in the HP, it's gonna be so difficult to deal with the Lunox with the Chaos Order, right? Because that spell does percentage max HP damage.
Well, they're putting a lot of their money onto Bella Ciao. I can't believe I actually said that. They're putting their money onto the Clint here. I mean, it's a lot of pressure onto the gold lane, right? To be able to reach in that late game and be able to actually have that ROI for the entire team. But I'm thinking there's a lot more better options than having this Clint. Not unless it's their comfort pick, right? And I wouldn't say no to a comfort pick. So I think definitely Moldova has some idea on what to happen here. Still saving up their jungler and their mid laner, right? For the last two picks, since Ukraine has already picked up this Lunox again, super aggressive for the first three picks. I like that Zas ban coming through, one of the most OP picks currently in the newest patch. So I think it's a great way to actually take that out. They take away the Angela here as well. Double supports taken out here for the last two bans here of Moldova.
It's a great approach for sure because they want to dive in and they want to make sure that they can just burst everyone down. So having a Zask that first of all can survive much longer and then afterwards leave a nightmare spawn after he gets taken out. It's definitely not what they want to deal with right here. They want to focus on the real threats like the Clint later on in the game, and they picked that Savior that got a bit of a buff. Right, that kind of makes the late game a bit more dangerous, a bit
Mm-hmm.
more flexible as well. But for the side of Moldova, they're banning two great utility heroes. So they're trying to make sure that if Ukraine wants to go in aggressively, they at least have to go in without protection, right?
I still don't know where the Roger and Lunox are going, right? Like, I mean, this can still be like a gold lane Lunox and then a Roger either in the gold lane or
Mm.
in the jungle. So I'm thinking, is Moldova going for an assassin hero or are they gonna go for utility here? They lock in the Vexana first, which is actually a great way to kind of counter out all these dive heroes from the side of Ukraine.
A great utility tool for sure. The first skill can actually terrify the whole team if they're huddled up too close together. And of course, the Eternal Guard, the knock up first of all, and afterwards one more body, right, that can just tank up some of those spells, tank up some of the damage. The Zask would be amazing, but I guess the Vexana is pretty viable there still. But for Ukraine, they go for that Martis right now, so most likely this Roger will be in the gold lane and with the Florian available, it won't be a Mathilda with utility, and it won't be the same kind of impact like a hard guard can do. But the Bloom will definitely ensure that they can get the
Yeah.
sustain advantage here, especially if there's going to be a prolonged fight.
Oh wow. Okay, so this is actually going to be the final battle spell that Ukraine is going to use. I'm still actually waiting for Sensei to pick up that retribution. I think they're still waiting for the final pick here. It's going to be a Degrot for the side of Moldova. Let's see if this is going to be final. Oh, I'm actually expecting the Martis here to be the jungler, but it's actually going to be okay. So this makes it really all the more confusing. Martis mid lane, Florian, Rome, then you get the Lunox on the gold lane and the CC on the XP. I don't know. What do you think, Arashi? You're the analyst here.
I think this is beyond science, man. I'm not quite sure what to expect. But in theory, this just sets up Ukraine for a very aggressive, just roaming style, constant fighting, most likely, all over the place. And with the global presence that the Florin kind of gives towards this composition, I guess it makes sense that they want every single player on their team to be able to just go in aggressively independently, and then the Florent can just wait and choose for who will require it. And that will force Moldova to be a lot more reactive and perhaps spend a lot more of their battle spells or their cooldowns preemptively. So I think it's a bit of a mind game here coming in from Ukraine. For the side of Moldova, I think they got to be really careful about that mid lane in particular. Because if something comes in, just the slightest bit of intervention comes in from the jungle, with a mid lane Mardis here, it seems, that's going to be a lot of damage, especially in the early game. And the Vexana can be very vulnerable, especially before level 4.
Yeah, you can for Ukraine here, they can totally be so aggressive here in the early game. I mean, you got a Martis, you got a Florine, and you got a Roger. What more can you ask for? You can be super aggressive here, especially when it comes to like pickoffs, especially right before the turtle. I mean, I think for Moldova, what they have here is the high loss, right? Somebody to actually protect these damage dealers before they actually get their items. But right now, we see a lot of pokes from both sides. No one has the upper hand just yet.
Moldova has a bit more presence to go in for. Sensei trying to lead the charge, gets chunked quite heavily, but the little falls into the hands of Ukraine still. Seeing the pressure of this mid lane Martis. I guess he's the one face checking, and then the quote unquote support can just heal him up in the midst of these engagements. That seems to be the game plan they have right here. But for both teams, we haven't really seen a lot of big movements, a lot of invasions into the jungle per se. It's all revolving around this mid lane here.
Oh, but it seems like it's going to be engaged here. Markon going to be able to draw in the first blood from the side of Ukraine. Man, I was expecting that. I mean, if you get 3 heroes hiding in a bush right there, you know that chaos is just about to ensue. And just there, Ukraine getting in the first blood. This will actually give them some upper hand, especially on the positioning in the turtle as well.
On the other side, in the gold lane here, we're seeing that the Clint is doing pretty well. I believe his laning prowess was kind of buffed in the last patch. So the Lunox will definitely need a bit more time before he can really try and bully. But the fact that, for now at least, Ukraine can just nuke down the Hylas that's supposed to be this tanky, massive front line with the Vengeance even, I think it's going to be a big warning sign towards Moldova to try and maybe go for trades, go for exchanges, and avoid going for an all-out fight here. Because, you know, with the Roger available, with the Mardis as well, there's a lot of chances for Ukraine to just get one kill and then just go and start snowballing.
Yeah, wow, boss gonna be forced to use that Black Dragon form, but to no avail. Sensei gonna be use that Decimate to take him down. But on the other hand, though, flip side, Moldova is gonna actually be able to steal away that turtle from the side of Ukraine.
So great play from Ukraine to just go for the pick off first. That's a bit of a standard we've seen in recent times, but that's a great response as well from Moldova. But now look at the top side, Yoshimitsu once again, glorious pathway.
Oh no, forced to flicker out to safety, but you know that was just saving the lives of the teammates here of Moldova. But right now, without the ultimates, I think Ukraine can actually just go for it. They know they have that information right now, but how do they use it? I think they want to sandwich Bella Chow here on his lane.
They're certainly looking for something a bit more aggressive. They know they're working against time right here because they do not have a marksman for the late game. And, you know, the gold laner is a mage. So technically they do have a good balance of damage, but overall they don't have the same kind of range to play around with to try and output that damage the later the game goes. They can circumvent that by going for just aggressive dives and trying to make sure that Bella Chow can't play the game. But for now, they're still just trying to find ways to try and orchestrate a dive.
Q gonna be forced to use in the ultimate. Sensei is gonna be first one to fall, and now Yoshimitsu gonna go for the chase. Glorious pathway not gonna be enough, as the side of Ukraine will be able to safely back away.
A great play by Moldova here to just really get the advantage, even though on paper at least Ukraine is supposed to be having all the control, but they gotta be a bit more careful, I would say, because if you look at the situation here, yes, they're kind of still somewhat hanging in there when it comes to the gold lead, but Macaron on this Roger is just farming up a storm, and he's relatively untouched. Moldova is spending so much time here trying to react, trying to stop the aggression, that the Roger hasn't always been present, and he's just being able to farm again and again.
You just called it Arashi, and here they are. They're gonna try to go for the invade. Glorious pathway has been casted here by Yoshimitsu. I don't think they want to let Ukraine near that purple buff. And with that Eternal Guard, wow, look at the damage coming out from Valdo. So able to take down Suspicious Owl. And now Sensei gonna go for the Decimate. Bella Chow, the first one to fall. And next comes Yoshimitsu. Will he go for the triple? Actually, not enough time, but Ukraine actually gets themselves a good foothold here onto this turtle.
That's unfortunate for Moldova, man. They try to equalize on the purple buff steal, especially if they're trying to force maybe the retribution to try and go for the turtle. But in the jungle, against so much AoE coming in from Ukraine and the execute, right? The reset coming in from the decimate, that's just an aggressive play. But look at this, Ukraine striking back immediately.
Yeah, Macron still does not have that damage, knowing that the turtle will be the priority. Ukraine will just go for that as Yoshimitsu forced to use the glorious pathway out to safety instead. 6 points for Ukraine, 17k. As for the side of Moldova, they're actually really struggling and being very reactive to what Ukraine is just putting out. But so far, it's Ukraine that has the driver's seat. Not only do they have like at least like one, yeah, they have like one out of the two turtles that have spawned, and at the same time all their side lanes are taken care of.
You're not feeling the pressure of that mid game, right? We talked about Ukraine having strong early game heroes, especially in the mid game. It becomes that much more dangerous. We saw just how much damage was available with the AoE and the resets. So now they're sticking together, but Bella Chow walks into a trap.
Wow, the trap laid out there by Sensei, glorious pathway, and the light from Valdosi Cutie will be able to escape that one. They're just getting kills after kills here for Ukraine. What does Moldova need to do here right now? Because it seems like every time Yoshimitsu just lays out that glorious pathway, it seems like, it is not to go for the engage. It's actually to counter engage from what Ukraine has been showing so far.
He is brute forcing these turrets, but look at the response coming here from a boss trying to go for an engage to try and equalize, but they have no crowd control tools available. You can see that Ukraine is going in and out of the fights whenever they want. They're just going for fights that they know they can win, and otherwise,
Sensei!
they go for this.
Yeah, Sensei gonna be able to take that suspicious owl, but the shutdown comes through. Macron trying to finish the job, gets a double kill from the backside, a triple. That with Valdosi Cutie as well, finishing it off with a killing spree. It's a wipeout for Moldova as Ukraine will go for the straight push.
Sensei will fall, but he has done more than enough. So that play resulted in an absolute wipeout, and we're just talking about that early to mid-game potential from the side of Ukraine, and they just show it. You're seeing why Moldova was just so concerned in trying to defend their turrets, and why they're sticking together as 5 every single time. Because whenever Ukraine really puts their foot on that gas pedal, Moldova can't really react. They can't even have the same kind of escape tools to avoid giving up kills. And with that sequence of events, they're just behind on a quite significant amount of gold right here. So Ukraine, they're absolutely taking over when it comes to pressure, and they're even ignoring the turtle for now.
Yeah, they're just gonna actually wait for the Lord. Bella Chow secured in that Sky Piercer as well. Not so sure if that will be enough. I think Ukraine will just let the turtle slide, or yeah, okay, they're just gonna let it slide. Go straight for the Lord here, not even the luminous one. I think they just want to go for the fast-paced game, right? Like knowing the lineup here of Ukraine, you did mention it was early game, right? And by the time it reaches mid-game, they need to have that, at least get the second-tier turrets out and then go for the final push. Because you know what? One by one, just as we were saying, they're taking in the Lord. Ukraine just takes one down and has secured in the first Lord for this game.
I mean, you're seeing the pressure just pouring down from Ukraine, man. They had 3 members going for the Lord, and they sent 2 to stop a push to get a trade onto Q earlier. And now in the jungle, even the most flimsiest of members are willing to just walk up and take that aggression because they know they have that Florin, right? That insane healing potential. And just like this, they're waiting for the Lord. They're setting up the waves, and they send Hawk on the bottom lane right here to just push it out, making sure that Moldova will be just constantly guessing, where is Ukraine? How are they going to try and approach this? And when are they going to make their next move? Because if they don't guess it properly, this next sequence of events could be the final one.
Yeah, even Yoshimitsu is kind of thinking twice if he's gonna actually check that bush. It could actually be their end though, right? Like Sensei's setup earlier, but right now it is going to be the push here. There goes the glorious pathway onto the backside. Boss gonna try to make in some plays. Black Dragon form actually back to the base. They know that Ukraine has the upper hand. They can't force out any more of these team fights, knowing that they only have at least all of their inhibitors turrets up left right now. But Hawk right now, they're gonna try to go in for some play. Bella Chow gonna be the first one to fall. Macron gonna be able to take down Suspicious Owl and Yoshimitsu as well. Sensei again, the sacrificial lamb here, but it is going to be very, very much worth it as Ukraine takes in the first game of the series.
So close to 10 minutes, but Ukraine did not let it go that far. Wow, man. We talked about surprising plays, surprising strategies. Martis mid lane, they made it work. They used it as a utility slash reset tool. And you're seeing that whenever a fight happens, Sensei has no regard for his survivability whatsoever, man. He goes in and he knows whatever happens, this team will capitalize on the situation. It's a great display of creativity, but also a great display of synergy and communication, man. Ukraine with a great game plan and even better execution. I think Moldova were just they were just caught completely off guard there.
Yeah, I mean that's why he's called Sensei, right? Like everybody follows his play, and actually, I think it's a very good balance of like setup plays that Sensei had all throughout the game. I think he's my personal MVP here. That wouldn't have happened if Sensei didn't really lay out those plays with the Martis, right? Like if you think about it, their composition was running on a Florin, so there was really no one else to make the plays. I think I've seen a similar play, especially like in MLBB, the women's league in particular. You got the likes of Team Vitality actually picking up like a Terizla in the
Right.
mid lane. So heavy sustain, CCs and setups. It's actually really good for their side. But looking at the highlights here, Arashi, what can we actually say for the first few minutes? There wasn't actually a lot of invades. Like there were attempts from Moldova, but it actually kind of backfired on them.
Especially here, I think this is like the main turning point for the side of Ukraine. It seems like it was still kind of even, and they were still struggling to really find that snowball they really require. But from that play, they were able to get a wipeout. They were able to get the turtle as well. And from there on, you can see that even if Moldova tries to return the aggression, they were just unable to do so. And with the way the back and forth, you're seeing that they are forcing Moldova to use some of the crowd control tools. And afterwards, once they know that those tools are no longer available, they just go in ham. I mean, Macaron being a Roger, being technically a marksman as well. I know he's tanky still on the Roger, but diving under the turret 1v3, that's the kind of domination that he was having here because he was farming so intensively in the early game. So he was actually deceptively dangerous at this point in the game.
Yeah. I mean, right after those setups from Sensei, there's nothing more I can say, right? Like, he really led the charge for the side of Ukraine, even though there were times that Moldova actually had some openings there, especially with Yoshimitsu's glorious pathway. But yeah, that's it for game number one. It's a BO3. So let's see who will actually make it up on top because it is going to be Ukraine that is already on the match point here for the next game.
All right,
Welcome
ladies and
back.
gentlemen, welcome back to the match between Ukraine and Moldova. And for game one, we've seen a crazy development here, man. The mid lane Mardis resulting in two
Mhm.
wipeouts for the side of Ukraine. So with that break we just went into here, there's definitely a lot of discussions for both teams, right? For Ukraine, are they gonna try and maintain the same kind of strat, right? The same kind of playstyle? For Moldova, are they gonna try and change something up, go for a bit more crowd control because it seems like they were struggling to get their hands on Ukraine in game number one.
Yeah, I think Arashi was just way too stunned to speak there, still thinking about that last game. But yeah, I think for Moldova, I think they had an idea of what they wanted to happen right in game number one. But I think here for game number two, especially since this is already going to be the match point for Ukraine, I think they have to pull all of their cards out, right? Like apart from like
Mm-hmm.
comfort picks, they have to kind of find a way to engage. They had tools to engage. They had the high loss, they got the Yuzong, but right after that, it seems like they were kind of hesitant on going on those engages, whereas Ukraine was a little bit more confident on taking those risky type of plays, and they were able to actually make it or pull it through and get game number one.
I think it's also the fact that the synergy between the for both teams are quite different because for Ukraine, whoever goes in first, it doesn't matter, right? Everyone can just dive in. We talked about this from the first three picks. It's a very dive heavy strategy, and more than anything, it's a lot of AoE as well. So it's a great mix of AoE, of crowd control, dive movement, but also reset. So it just makes for a great combination, especially in the early game, right? We talked about the maybe the downsides being that late game situation where the Roger maybe isn't exactly a DPS machine like the Clint could be. But for the side of Moldova, man, you see that whenever they do get some kind of engage with Eternal Guard, they're struggling to try and follow up with it, right? And more importantly, follow up with it while still maintaining their backline. That seems to be really the main issue there. The backline not being able to move forward with relative safety, even though they do have Yoshimitsu on that Hylas, right, being the main front line. So I think synergy-wise, it could be improved as well. But we're seeing a switch right here. It's going to be
Yeah.
Moldova going for the first pick.
Oh, it's still going to be the Aldous and Julian ban here for Ukraine, despite the fact that they're on the red side this time, right? So this is like, I would say, huge respect. I mean, I don't know about the Aldous
Mhm.
here, but I think it's a huge respect to the side of Moldova, and even the Julian, which seems to be like something that they're very comfortable with, and Ukraine knows that. But this time, Moldova being on the blue side, they pick up the Roger this time, stealing it away from Ukraine. But this time, Ukraine can actually answer it out, right? Like having the Roger here as the first pick. There's just so many other things open here. That the link's already out, so I'm not so sure what they're gonna pair this up
Ooh,
with. Oh, wow, Edith
this
and Angela for the first two picks here of Ukraine.
This is a very powerful start here from Ukraine, man. The Edith being so flexible and still so strong, because again, you're not really forced to itemize a certain way. Whatever kind of build you choose to go for, you're still gonna have that impact, right? That second lease at life with the Primal Wrath, the engage potential, the counter engage potential as
Ooh,
well, and along with that, the Angela. For Moldova, they're doubling down here with the damage coming in with the Savior,
yep.
potentially expecting Ukraine to just barrel down through the lane the same way we saw earlier in game one. Definitely, the Savior with the AoE crowd control can be a big solution, but with an Angela in the picture, man, I think it's going to be a bit more difficult than they expect. And they take away the Yuzong, great laning potential, but also a great combo with the Angela. But whoa, Ukraine.
Yeah, wow. I was thinking of like other assassins are still open, right? Like Hellkurt or the other assassins are still up, but the Benedetta that still again these are super flexible picks coming out from Ukraine, pretty much like what they had in game number one, right? Like the Benedetta could still be the XP lane. The Edith could be a roamer or an XP laner. So again, it is still not clear what Ukraine's full lineup is going to be, still saving their damage dealers for their final two picks. But this means Moldova is going to have that chance to ban those picks away.
And for Ukraine, I think you can really read into their mindset right here. They want to be able to go in aggressively like they did in game number one. And the fact that they have a Benedetta here and they ban it with the Franco and the Moskov, they're trying to limit Moldova's options on stopping these really high mobility, high mechanical plays coming in from the Benedetta, most likely. For Moldova, again, now you have two heroes that can just go in aggressively, but then the Savior is going to be left behind quite far. Maybe he can still be relevant in the fight with the Dawning Light, but chances are he's gonna be hunted down, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to take down the Savior. I mean, immediately when that was picked up, Ukraine was like, okay, let's go for the Benedetta, somebody that can take down the back lines. But they do have, the Yuzhong as well that is something that they have to deal with as well with their backline damage dealers. They still don't have their gold laner here. Earlier, Ukraine again went for the dive kind of setup, like the Lunox, the Roger. These are pretty much heroes that can protect themselves. So I'm not so sure what they're gonna go for. They're still gonna go for the same thing because the Lunox is still pretty much open here. And with these first three picks of Ukraine, it seems like I was thinking of them going for more magical damage, but they lock in this Claude instead. Some a marksman that has a lot of mobility.
A lot of mobility and great synergy with the Hard Guard, right? Blazing Duet, Battle Mirror Image, Hard Guard combo could be lethal for this composition for Moldova because they're all relatively short range. The Roger, even with that long range kit, is still gonna be up close and personal. And on the topic of magic damage, usually when you see an Angela, you do want a bit more. But perhaps for Ukraine, the fact that they have this Edith, right? Once again,
Yes.
with this, with just providing so much for the team, the Primal Wrath can just supplement that magic damage if they're really forced to rely on it later on in the game. So a lot more flexible, a lot more options available for the side of Ukraine for sure.
There's a lot of control here for Ukraine if you think about it, right? But speaking of control,
Whoa!
whoa, is that right? It's an Alucard and the Minotaur and Ukraine finally locks it. Okay, okay, this is one of my favorite OG combos. I mean, we've seen several Angela combos, right? Angeling, Angela Roger, but this is, if you guys know, you've been playing MLBB, since the time it started, this was the OG combo. The Leomord and the Angela. I'm not surprised that this is actually coming back since the Leomord can benefit from the Sky Piercer.
If it's gonna be a bit more difficult, now you really worry for Moldova, right? The fact that they were confidently picking up the Alucard, I guess they're trying to maybe mislead. They thought that they pulled a quick one here, pretending that the Roger was going into the jungle and then showing the Alucard. Who would have thought? But now against a Leomord, again, a fighter, right? They can just brawl it out. They can be a lot more aggressive. And on top of that, with the support of the Angela, this means that the early game for the Alucard could be quite dangerous here, precarious for the side of Moldova, man. They need to make sure that they have adequate protection. And considering the fact that their roamer is a Minotaur, it's great help in the middle of a skirmish, right? Card control as well as sustain. But overall, not a lot more damage to trade back against Ukraine. So we have to see how this dynamic really fits in the early game, especially if Ukraine wants to try and use that level 4 power spike or the early game level 2 spammability of the Angela to really try and take control of the game early.
Okay, this time Yoshimitsu is on a Minotaur, so this has a lot more CC than the high loss that kind of just more of aids your entire teammates, right? But speaking of the pokes here, this time Sensei is actually going to be playing with a hero that has a very different playstyle from what he actually had in game number 1 here. And so far, Ukraine, they've done this several times, and with this hero composition, they can pretty much dominate with the pokes here in the early game.
You see the early game pressure now. Petrified from Hawk, though, going for a kill.
Okay, yeah, he's not going to go all the way in. Yoshimitsu is still safe. It is still quite early, and then there's still a turret there. So they're just going to be like, let's chill. We got the upper hand here. We got the Little Wanderer as well. So not to panic, because, you know, if they get taken down there, that would have been an advantage for Moldova to actually have a better place in the turtle.
Now you have to wonder what Ukraine is the main shot caller Sensei, because if you remember in game 1, it's always the Martis making the plays happen. Now with the Angela and with all the combos available, I mean, even in the late game or in the mid game, you can combo the Angela with the Edith for a very healthy amount of damage. So if he's the one shot calling, then you're going to see a lot more synergized plays coming in from Ukraine, where someone is going to go in and the hard guard is most definitely going to be on point. For now, though, we can see that Ukraine will be trying to make sure that they have the pressure right in the lanes. That has been their main weapon so far. And before the next hurdle, they're definitely going to try and contest that first.
Yeah, the man of many faces, Sensei, playing the Angela this time. And wow, they might actually outplay Boss here, but he's able to pop in that Black Dragon form in the nick of time, out to safety, out from the Land of Dawn. But here we have the turtle. Let's see who's going to be able to take it. It's going to be Macaron, able to pull in that Retribution. And right now, with the hard card, they can actually go for it. And right now, Suspicious Owl going to be the first one to fall. A double kill, triple for Macaron as early as the 2-minute mark. I mean, this is already looking so deadly, Arashi. I mean, a Leomord running on a triple kill 2 minutes in. I mean, that's not even 1 kill per minute.
The play from Vlado, though, going for the pullback with the Battle Mirror image, won't result in anything just yet, but the rest of the team coming through, seeing an opportunity. They might go for a dive.
Yep, Belichao just knows it. He's going to get stunned here by Sensei. Going to try to fight back, and here comes Yoshimitsu. Not yet level 4, is not able to make the play. Ukraine has the upper hand, and they're going to be able to take down Belichao. 4 kills for Ukraine, 3 minutes in. This is just insane. They want to make this as fast as possible, right? And you can see the aggression that they've been making. It's so calculated. I'm not surprised at this point if it's actually Sensei, but I'm actually curious for Moldova, right? It should be Yoshimitsu making in the calls here. I mean, he's the roamer. But right now, it seems like it is going to be a similar play to what we've seen in game number 1. Macaron going to go in for the Phantom Steed onto Q. He's going to be able to take in the purple buff, taking that Retribution away, and now Suspicious Owl as well. Going to go for the Dawning Light, but it's not enough with the hard guard. Yoshimitsu going to fall to Sensei and Macaron. It is going to be 3 heroes down for the price of none. Moldova still has no time to answer back to Ukraine.
I mean, like you mentioned, Kim, I mean, you called it out so early on. That Leomord Angela combo is just so obnoxious. I mean, you don't even see Macaron's HP bar go down that low. That's just how much more aggressive he can be. And now Vlado, once again, pushing the tempo, knowing that Macaron is in the area, and Bella might be dove on yet again.
Yep, Freestyle is here to go in for that onward play, but Vladosi Cutie will be able to get in the gold plating. But right now, he's going to be the target, going to be able to dash all the way out. Q not going to be able to get anyone in. Super calculated, by the way, from the side of Ukraine. But then again, they're just answering it out to what Ukraine is showing. And here comes the Phantom State once again. Nobody is able to stop Macaron. He's just diving in and out. And with the hard guard, he's able to get a triple. Is it going to be the Maniac? Is he going to go for the Maniac? Okay, they're actually going to back away to safety. It might actually backfire onto them. Get that shut down. 10 kills for Ukraine, Arashi. What is this? 4 minutes in.
10 kills for Ukraine, 7 on Macaron, just literally horsing around the land of Dawn. It's just so much damage and so much AoE, and Suspicious just got caught so far up, man. You know the Savior has quite a short range technically if he wants to spam out all the spells, but he cannot afford to just stay in the front. Now jumping on Sensei though, can Moldova trade back?
Oh no, they're going to try to go for Sensei, but Macaron says, not today. We're going to go for it. And here comes the entire cavalry from the side of Ukraine. Suspicious Aldo, somebody has to take control of him, but right before he's able to pop in that combo, they get wiped out one by one. Again, a double kill picked up by Macaron. I mean, under their own turrets, they're not even safe here right now, but now it seems like Sensei going to be a little bit too overzealous there, as Suspicious Al will be able to bite back with the first kill of Moldova in this game.
More than a little bit overzealous. Freestyle here, making what seems to be a freestyle play as well. What is going on? Ukraine, although with these antics, they are buying a lot of time. Over on the bot side and the top side, turrets are just falling down left and right as Vlado picks up his Demon Hunter sword, and a Hawk just a bit too mobile. That's just the advantage he has. No one can really catch him, and the Alucard just hasn't been paying off, man. Q is just completely shut down, and he has no real easy targets at all. There's not a single target that he can jump on, even before talking about the hard guard combo available. Even if he goes on Vlado, he can just jump out with the Battle Mirror image and make it all for nothing.
Freestyle goes in again for the play, and now he's going to be able to get that onwards in. Nice headbutt there from Yoshimitsu, but the placing duet from back. It's Vlado Security, able to pick up a double. Gonna go for the triple. Suspicious Al with no flicker out. He's going to be able to get a triple again. Every single time that Moldova is trying to make in these plays, they get dived on here by Ukraine, and there's just no way out. Either, Bella Chow has used up the flicker, Suspicious Al does not have the flicker anymore, and they just get out. They just get wiped out one by one here.
They're just being forced to make some really difficult choices, and whatever they do, it's like they're set up for failure. Even when they're able to get at least one trade back, it comes at the cost of 3 kills, plus a turret, plus the pressure, plus most of the jungle minions as well. Ukraine is just a lot more active around the map. And it is, again, it's their independence, right? The fact that with 2 or 3 members, they can set up for a very decisive play already. Whereas for Moldova, yes, they have some combos available here with the Minion Fury, with the Savior, and maybe using Bella Chow on the Roger for cleanup. But in order to do so, they have to wait for the exact ideal circumstance, and Ukraine is not allowing that at all.
Yeah, I mean, with the hard guard up, it is time to go for the full charge. And that's going to be Yoshimitsu not even going to be able to get in that play. They do take down Hawk, though, but Macaron is still on a rampage. Include the Blazing Duet there. It is just too much to handle here for the side of Moldova. Again, 3 members down. Honestly, at this point, Arashi, if I were Moldova, I'd kind of back away if the hard guard was up, especially onto Macaron. They haven't even shut him down here at this point, and it's looking so deadly already. 21 kills for Ukraine. I think this is a 11k gold lead for them. I'm not so sure what they need to do. I think the best way to actually kick back the gold towards their side is get a shutdown. But how can they do so? Macaron has been completely unstoppable in this game.
They got somewhat low earlier in the base, and I think that's the only real way. If they can really wait for that base dive from Ukraine that they do impatiently, then maybe there's a chance. But for now, any fight they take on hostile territory without the assistance of a turret or the crystal just adding to their damage output, it's going to be way, way too difficult as Vlado goes in solo.
Yep, I mean, with Sensei there backing him up, he should be able to be completely confident to take this one. Blazing Duet in, and That is going to be double kill once again picked up by Vladosecurity, but it's still not
Oh,
over. The hard card is up. It is time to go for more, but the Blazing Duet is still not up. They are able to take down 3 members once again, and not to mention that they have the Lord to boot. I completely forgot that they got that one. And with the Petrify here from Hawk, Yoshimitsu goes in for the Minoan's Fury, but it's a wipeout for the side of Moldova. And I think this is it. Ukraine, they lock in the base. It is over. They take this series with a 2-0.
an amazing, decisive, clean sweep. Both games not reaching 10 minutes, man. Ukraine are standing on business. And what a performance! Of course, Macaron does his thing, horsing around. But for Vlado, man, he is going fishing. 2 times he was able to just pull Bella Chow away from his team so far out. They're outclassing Moldova in the macro game, in the micro game mechanics as well. Ukraine, man, just showing that there are levels to this game.
Yeah, there's one thing I wanna actually put it all together and just say that Ukraine, they are all in for these risque type of plays, and they definitely pulled it off. I mean, if you're not that confident, right, like you aren't able to put out these types of plays. You've seen it in game number one, and every single time that there's a hard card, if I were Moldova, I would kind of back away to my tower. But at this point, right, even under their own turret, they are not safe from the havoc that is Macaron here with the Leomord at that.
I mean, they are against an Angela with a lot of quote unquote independent heroes. I can't help but feel like they're really, Moldova was really supposed to take it a bit easy in the early game. Because level 4, level 5, times like this is where that composition is the strongest, man. With the hard guard combo, with the Leomord just being both tanky and doing damage. They should have waited a bit more. And Suspicious Owl here, I must say, suspiciously just walking around a bit too far. Down immediately. That's the amount of damage that they have to really look out for. And they really seem to not really respect the potential from Ukraine. They know that Ukraine is all about that dive, all about that aggression. But you're seeing the spells being used for damage, for poke, for threats. When in reality, if you're up against this composition, you need to save everything for that defensive use, man. Because you can see that when there's stuns and immobilizers available for Moldova, Ukraine does struggle to really go in aggressively, right? They kind of hesitate a bit and wait for the right moment. But once they know that the knockups are down, the immobilizers are down, look at what they do here. They just go in aggressively, and they have more than enough sustain with the Flash of the Oasis on top of the kit of the Angela to really just take matters into their own hands.
Honestly, it's so hard to bounce back from a situation. It's kind of like having a Martis who has snowballed so well in the early game, and this is exactly
Oh
what
yeah,
happened, right? Like Macaron
dude.
just getting a triple, not even like 3 minutes in. So, without any shutdowns from the side of Moldova, it was really, really hard to bounce back from that type of situation. I see the attempts here from Yoshimitsu trying to set up like some a very good Minoan's Fury, but unfortunately, damage was already too much. Like Vladosecurity was
Yeah.
already dishing out so much damage with the Blazing Duet. So don't even get me started on Macaron's Leomord. Honestly, it was just really too much to take in. We've actually started out a very explosive start here with all of the players, all of the teams here for Ukraine and Moldova, showing us what they got. But for now, we're gonna take a short break first. Don't you guys go away. We're gonna be right back with more MLBB action with the Burger Kim and Arashi here at IESF.